What is going on, YouTube? So coming back with my next college football team preview, and right now I will be doing the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a team that has a lot of speculation about how good they can do heading into 2016. It's been picked as a dark horse by a lot of people. They do have a pretty heavy amount of returning starters coming back on the offensive side of the ball, as well as everywhere on the defense except for the defensive line, where they did lose a pretty heavy amount of starters. So let's go ahead and get into my three key players. Start with the first one being Tommy Armstrong, the most obvious player if Nebraska wants to have success in 2016. Tommy Armstrong comes back as being, one of the more athletic quarterbacks in college football. He is returning for his third year starting for Nebraska, and just really has never found any consistency while he's been there. Now, if he can eliminate the turnovers, that's kind of the biggest thing with Tommy Armstrong, is just eliminating the turnovers, then Nebraska will be fine. They would have beat Iowa in their final game last year had Tommy Armstrong not thrown, I believe, 4 interceptions. He returns a whole host of weapons. When you talk about the wide receiving core, Jordan Westerkamp for another year, DeMornay Pearsonell. If both those guys can stay healthy, then this can be a very dangerous offense this season. Now, move into another weapon that they got returning along the offensive side of the ball, and that is Terrell Newby. Rushed for just over 700 yards last year, and while he might not have been the most efficient player along the offensive side of the ball, or even in the backfield for Nebraska, he is probably their feature back for this year. Second in line, Devin Ozigbo averaged around 5.5 yards per carry, but he's more of a short yardage sort of back, a bigger guy. Michael Wilbon will probably challenge for some carries as well. But this is Newby's senior year. I think he's going to make a big push to be a 1,000-yard rusher, to be one of the better rushers in the Big Ten. And if Nebraska wants to be able to have a solid offense this year, they're going to have to be able to run the ball. The offensive line does lose, I believe, 3 or 4 starters. So that's going to hurt Terrell Newby, but they do have fullback returning in Harrison Jordan, that should help provide a little bit more blocking for Terrell Newby. So move on to my next key player, and that is Michael Rose-Ivy. This is a linebacking core for Nebraska that returns, I believe, all 3 starters. Josh Banderas, Dedrick Young, and Michael Rose-Ivy should be one of the better linebacking cores inside the Big Ten. This is also a secondary that, while still young, does return a few starters, most notably Nathan Gary and Joshua Cale. But the linebacking core is going to have to be the feature point of this defense to be able to stop some of the better running games inside the Big Ten. Some of these teams that are playing this year have just fantastic running games. Ohio State will probably have another good running back in Mike Weber this year. Iowa, obviously, a good team running the ball last year. Jordan Canzeri returns for another year. Wisconsin, Cord Clement. Oregon, Royce Freeman. So if they can't stop the run, then it could be a long season for Nebraska, especially in some of their key games. Now, move on to my 2 X factors, and the first one is the turnover on the defensive line. This is more or less just the new guys on the defensive line being able to come in and step up in the loss of, guys like Malik Collins that were just absolute studs for Nebraska last year. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on Kevin Maurice's shoulders as the guy that really had the most, or really has taken the most snaps for anyone along that Nebraska defensive line. I mentioned earlier about them being able to stop the run. They were one of the best run-stopping teams in the Big Ten last year. A lot of pressure is also going to be on Ross Juris, to be able to generate some pass rush and also help in stopping some of the better run games inside the Big Ten. So move on to my second X factor, and that is Mike Riley's progression. Came in as a first-year coach for Nebraska last year. Didn't do a great job, didn't do a terrible job. That's my opinion. Obviously, Bo Pelini was... You knew what you were going to get from Bo Pelini every single year. You were going to get 8 or 9 wins. Well, Mike Riley came in last year, got 6 wins. They did get a bowl win, but still it was a disappointing season for Nebraska as a whole. If he can improve his record by about 2 or 3 wins, then that'll be more than enough to give him job security for at least the next 2 years. I don't think he's on the hot seat yet, but with the way college football coaching goes nowadays, you have no idea how fast coaches will be moved in and out. Obviously, coaches are being moved out faster than ever, especially when you're at a blue blood program like Nebraska. So move into my trap game for Nebraska, and I think it is Northwestern. Now, some of you might be thinking, why would it be Northwestern? They are actually a pretty good team and might even come into that game as favorites. I don't think they will, actually. I think Nebraska will be able to mop up their first 2 teams and then probably play a close game against Oregon. And Northwestern, I think they'll just have a kind of a casual start heading into the season. Now, you could consider a game like at Indiana or Minnesota at home a trap game, but if Nebraska wants to have the type of season that a lot of people are hyping them up to be, especially as a dark horse, this is a game you're going to have to be favored in, and you're going to have to be able to overcome and obviously get a win. It is at Northwestern, so it is their first road game of the year, and out of their first 5 games, it's their only road game. So that is a very important game that they cannot overlook. It is the first conference game as well. So my biggest game for them this year is Iowa. Final game of the year, game that they almost won in 2015, and honestly could be the battle for the Big Ten West. Nebraska might be the second best team, might be the best team. I think it is a 3-team battle at the top of the Big Ten West between Wisconsin, Iowa, and Nebraska. And obviously, if it comes down to it, they're going to have to be able to win to get into the Big Ten championship game. Iowa returns a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Jordan Canzeri, C.J. Beathard, Des King, all guys that did give Nebraska a pretty tough time last year, especially Des King leading that Iowa defense to drawing 4 interceptions from Armstrong. So my record prediction for Nebraska, I do think they're going to go 8-5. A lot of people think this could be a 10-win team, maybe even a college football playoff contender. I am nowhere close to being able to give them that recognition, just because I'm not ready to give a 6-win team that has a very turnover-prone quarterback with that much turnover along the defensive line and a coach that has not had a proven track record of success in at least a decade. Excuse me. That kind of props to be able to say they can make it to the college football playoff. Now, to say that, I still think that they will have a very successful year, get a bowl win, be able to be a contender in the Big Ten for the first time in a year or two. So I think taking that progress for Mike Riley, taking that progress for a Nebraska team that I think can get better, is starting to recruit better again as well. Really should be taken as a sign for progress by Nebraska fans. But that pretty much does it for this video. I'll be coming back tomorrow with my BYU preview. So my first non-Power 5 team, unless you want to consider Nebraska, or not Nebraska, a BYU team that is an independent, a Power 5 team. Nonetheless, an intro you wanted to talk about. So that's pretty much it. See ya.